Hello, everybody. Today I thought I would tell you a story. So a few years ago, I went out to dinner with a friend of mine and her partner, and I remember we were sitting in the restaurant, the two of them on one side of the table, me on the other, and there was a lull in the conversation, and they were just looking at me. And I suddenly found myself feeling really awkward that I was there by myself. And either I made the joke or one of them made the joke. I think I said something like, oh, well, this is so great that we're all out doing this, you two and me and imaginary boyfriend here. And I think my friend's partner reached across the table to like with his hand outstretched, like, oh, hey, nice to meet you. And this sort of became like a little bit that we were all participating in. They were like, oh, so how did you two meet? And then I found myself sort of racking my brain like, oh, you want to know how we met? Well, here's the story. So I told them the story. At my university, to get into the library, you have to pass through those like sensor tower things, to make sure that you've checked out your books. But if you walked through these while you were wearing like a pair of headphones, you would experience this sort of like high-pitched squealing noise in your headphones. It was uncomfortable and like not advisable. So like most of us who knew, like if you were going to pass through these things, you'd like take your earphones out, take your headphones off, so that you didn't experience that. But I remember one day I was in the library and there was this guy like walking in, and I think I was on my way out, and I saw him like walk through with headphones on, and then like clearly he experienced that noise because he sort of like yanked his headphones off of his head and like looked behind him. And I said, oh yeah, they do that. If you wear your headphones in there, then there's this weird high-pitched noise. And he was like, oh, okay. And he walked into the library, and I noticed that he just sort of like got most of the way in and then stopped and was like looking around like he's lost. And at that point I'd been going to school for, I guess I was in my third year, probably. I think might have been spring of second year, actually, sometime in there. And so I, at that point, I knew my way around well enough, but I had also been the new kid, and so I knew that that's awkward when you're looking for something and no one will help you, or you don't want to ask for help. So I kind of just said, are you looking for something? Or are you looking for a particular room number? And he was actually looking for like he was meeting a group of people, and there's a room sort of in the library building towards the back of the library. There's a room in the back of the library beyond where the printers are, and it's like a group study space. And so I said, oh yeah, I know where that is. And I sort of like walked him over there. And so I asked, because he was new, he seemed new, but it was spring semester, and I was just like, oh, so like, are you new to this school? And he explained that he was actually there on exchange. He's one of the study abroad students. And I guess at this point it's pertinent to mention that he had a Scottish accent, which, oh my god, so cute, you guys. So anyway, he said his name was James, and that he had come from Aberdeen, and that he was studying journalism but had come to Capilano to take some communications courses. And I was like, oh cool, that's my program. And anyway, I showed him where the room was, and then I was kind of like, well, see you around. And I walked off. As it happens, I am sitting in class, and sometimes you get those like presentations from people, in class, where the teacher would be like, oh yeah, so-and-so from the student union is just going to come talk to us for the first 5 or 10 minutes of class to talk about X thing. Well, so that day it was someone from the study abroad program, and they said, hey you guys, so we've just had a whole bunch of new students in, and we are looking for volunteers to like show them around the school, and we're trying to match people up by program, whatever. Is anyone willing to like be a guide for these new students? And so I actually was like, yeah, I guess I could do that, because I'm, fairly comfortable with people. And also I was like still at that place in my university career where I was trying to find ways to integrate myself into the community. And so I ended up going down to our like international studies office later on that week, and we had all agreed to meet there during like the lunch block around 11:30. So I went, and there was that guy, James. And so we already, like, they saw that we knew each other, that we had met. I did end up showing him around sort of a day that week or the following week, sometime then. And then, I said, and if you need anything or want to talk about communications programs or whatever, feel free. And we ended up meeting several more times, just like to have coffee and just chat about the program and to talk about communications and that kind of stuff. And I was like, tell me more about your university, because I've never been to Scotland, but it's always somewhere that like I really wanted to go. So, we're chatting and we got along really, really well. But like eventually, spring semester ends and he goes back to Scotland, but he has my email address and I'm like, yeah, sure, email me. And so he did. He emailed me and followed me on Instagram. We sort of like, stayed in touch. And that summer we just got to talking a lot. It was something I actually used to do back with my best friend, who had coincidentally just very recently broken my heart at this point. But we used to send these like really long, enormous emails back and forth to each other. And so me and James started doing that. And I love doing that just because I love writing letters. And in this day and age, it feels sort of almost as special to get like a personal email as it does to get an actual handwritten letter in the mail. So that was really fun. And then it just like got more involved, I guess. I don't think that we ever, we didn't have any specific conversation about like what our relationship was. We just got to be really close. And I remember thinking like, this is kind of terrible, but I remember thinking like, oh, I'm so not going to tell any of my friends about this, because I just wanted it to be mine. And also if you're in that place where you're not really defining what a relationship is, it feels really weird to try to talk to other people about it and try to explain like, this person's really special to me, and they're like, are you dating? You're like, I don't know, we're kind of, maybe, I don't know. And so that went on for like a year and a half. So we were sort of like digital pen pals for a long time. And we talked, because I've always wanted to go to Scotland, right? And so we did talk about like, maybe I could go over there and visit. And, I'm pretty anxious about traveling, but I felt less anxious about it just because it's like, oh, okay, so this is a place I've always wanted to go, and there would be a person there who like could show me around and do stuff with, and that seems pretty cool. I was pretty excited about that. And like the year after we met, his sister got married. So he's got a sister, Alice, who married her husband, Kieran, in this big church in Aberdeen. And like that was the moment where he was like, God, I really wish you were here. And it's like that felt really special, just because like a wedding is a big kind of family moment. And one of my values, like something that's really important to me, is that any future partner I had would get along with my family and my group of friends. Like I feel really deeply that like your relationships often are all sort of interconnected, which is not to say that everybody is always going to get along all the time, but I think that it's important that like your partner fits into the rest of your life, like this sense that I'm an independent person, but I have this existing set of relationships. I have my family and friends and coworkers and everybody. And if I bring like a new person into my life and they're really important to me, I want to be able to share that with all my friends and stuff. I know this seems counterintuitive because I said that I wasn't talking about this to my friends, but it like, sometimes people be like that, okay? Sometimes I am big, I am large, I contain multitudes. But that was the point where we admitted, okay, maybe we're more than just friends or pen pals or whatever. Meanwhile, it became this kind of running joke because I had sort of introduced him in this situation at dinner with my friends. But they were like, oh, so like, what's imaginary boyfriend up to now? And be like, oh, well, right now Jim is really struggling with such and such course, or this or that. Like, it became sort of our joke thing that they would check in and see how Jim was doing. Anyway, this story does not have a great ending. The ending of the story is basically we live on different continents and we were like focusing on our individual lives here, especially like after he graduated and I graduated, and like we're both building our lives where we are, and he didn't come back to Canada and I didn't go to Scotland, and so things are just sort of like on pause, right? So I do still sort of have a pen pal. I just don't, don't have a boyfriend pen pal. But that's the story of how I met James. And now, dear viewers, it's time for you to decide. Was that just a lot of fun backstory to describe an imaginary boyfriend for the purposes of some long-running, years-old joke? Or did I actually meet a guy named James Nichol who lives in Aberdeen? And were we pen pals for more than 3 years? Leave your guesses below, and I'll see all of you tomorrow. Okay, you don't actually have to leave your guesses below. It was all a little bit of backstory that I made up for this imaginary character. But it was a whole heckin' lot of fun to do. This is actually something I think would be really fun as a video series, to do these sort of imagined histories and describe with total candor things that never actually happened. Hank Green did something similar to this a while back when he talked about the history of Black Friday, and I'll link to that video in the description below.